Hello everybody. Today we have a very important topic that was spurred when I talked to someone returning to the game who did not really understand how aggro, threat generation, threat reduction, hate, intimidate, etc. works. Today we will explain it, and I will also provide an example courtesy of Inkscapes. Thank you, Inkscapes, for being awesome. So, we will start by reading the wiki pages to explain what's going on, then we will go to the example. Hate. Hate is the calculation of how much damage you've dealt to an NPC. This is threat. The player having dealt the most damage to the NPC with the target will be the target of the NPC. Also, NPC attacks are directed to the first one that they see, but as soon as damage has been dealt, the NPC will now attack that target. Each enemy has its own hate list, and it will also be paired with the degree to how much it hates that character. I'll talk about that in a little bit. The list is constantly sorted by hate, and whoever is at the top of the list is chased and attacks. Any character who drops below 1 HP is removed from the list. This is referred to as aggro. Types of hate: there is melee, ranged, and magic hate. And we all know this because there are effects that increase melee, missile, and magic, and reduce as well, or all of them, or some of them, etc. Managing hate, we're not going to talk about this, but these are all of the ways to increase or decrease threat. Skills, also, we're going to talk about Intimidate. We're not going to talk about Diplo, it's not very useful, but Diplo... Intimidate increases your hate, Diplo decreases your hate, and Bluff decreases your hate as well. And then special cases, most monsters follow these rules except for these raid bosses do things. Flesh golems have randomized hate and ignore damage. Rust monsters prioritize Warforged. Enemies that teleport... No, that's not this. Whoops. Some of these enemies have random hate. I'm not going to talk about that. I don't really know. I don't think that's true. And then monsters that can teleport, burrow, become intangible, etc. reset hate. And then raid bosses have unique detect... I don't know what that is. Doesn't matter. And the last thing is imbues, damaging weapon procs, and spell procs do not apply threat reduction. So, what is the TLDR of this page? TLDR. When you deal damage to a monster, you are put on its hate list, and whenever other people deal damage to that monster, they are put on the hate list. Whoever is at the top of the hate list is the one that the monster attacks. You know, ignoring these special cases. In addition, the amount of hate that you do is dependent on your threat increase or decrease. So, if you deal 10 points of damage, and you have 50% threat reduction, that's the equivalent of 5 hate. If you have 200% threat increase, that's the equivalent of 30 hate. That's how the system works. That's why threat reduction is important for DPS and threat increase is important for tanks. We'll get more into that later, but that's the gist of it. Basically, you want to not be at the top of the list. Another important thing that the wiki does not say, but here it says the NPC will attack the first one they see. However, also paired with the degree to which it hates that character. What this means is, not a lot of people know this, but enemies actually are more attracted to people with less HP. So if there's two players equidistant from a monster that has not been dealt any damage, the monster will always go for the player with the least HP, never the one with the more HP. This is why sometimes your low HP characters seem like they get targeted more, is because they actually are getting targeted more. Now, whenever someone does damage to them, then they're on the list. But that is important, that enemies will target lower HP players until they're dealt damage. Also, the hate list, it doesn't say anywhere here. I know this is how it works, but the hate list also quote-unquote resets every X amount of time. I don't know what it is, but basically when it resets, you need to You need to apply more threat again to maintain aggro, and the reason I know this is because Intimidate. Activating the Intimidate skill rolls an Intimidate check for all monsters near you. There's a size penalty, we don't care. If your check beats a DC of that creature, the creature is intimidated and the following effects are applied. Your threat with the creature is set equal to the highest threat opponent. So basically, if someone has 10,000 threat, you suddenly become the guy with 10,000 threat and you get aggro. You gain additional threat against the creature equal to your Intimidate skill times 200. So if you have 100 Intimidate, that would be 20,000. Yeah, 20,000. So you now have 30,000 threat. And then, oh, well, it says that here. Anyways, additionally, if you successfully Intimidate, you gain this buff. And this can be used against any creature with intelligence. What that means is not every enemy this works on. Give some examples. Constructs, undead, vermin, they're immune. Some enemies work differently. But Intimidate is basically the taunt. So that's how it works. However, with this cooldown of 6 seconds, and what I said earlier about the hate list resets, I know it resets because the 6 second cooldown sometimes is not enough time, because even if you get the threat, if you let's say you get your 30,000 threat on the enemy, even if other people deal less than 30,000 threat over time, they will eventually still pull aggro, because eventually this 30,000 goes away. And that's one of the problems with Intimidate, is if you intimidate them and you get placed on the list, and then let's say your Cringe-quisitive pops No Holds Barred and then Epic Moment, well, suddenly they're dealing 1 billion damage and they instantly pull aggro regardless of your Intimidate, because they deal so much damage that your Intimidate doesn't do shit. So that's why in raids often ranged characters pull aggro, is because they full tilt and pull aggro. So that's a problem with Intimidate. So that's how Intimidate works. It's not very complicated, but it's really not enough. Now, there's 2 more things I want to talk about. Intimidating Shout is a new, well, not new, but like new-ish. It's introduced with Mr. Nora, I think. And it is a 30-second cooldown Intimidate, where enemies must make a will save equal to your Intimidate skill. And if they fail the save, you will become their aggro target no matter what. This also works on all creature types, even those immune to Intimidate. This is a very powerful ability. Its only problem is its long cooldown, because with enough Intimidate, you can get aggro on anything at any time, anywhere. Very powerful ability, critical and mandatory on tanks. It's just objectively better than Intimidate. It doesn't say how it works. I would assume it probably works similar to Intimidate with the threat thing, but I don't really know. It doesn't really say. It's also possible it's just a taunt that enemies will attack you no matter what for a certain amount of time. I don't know. If you know and you're a tank player, let me know down below in the comments. I'm curious how it works. The last thing I want to talk about is Unyielding Sentinel. A couple things here. First thing is Celestial Mandate Melee Cleave. This adds 3,000 hate to the target with a 6-second cooldown. My understanding of this is multiplied by your threat generation, I think. So that means when you hit with this, you deal a bunch of extra hate on the enemy, and this ability is very good for maintaining aggro. The problem is you have to hit with it, and tanks have bad to hit, but it is what it is. But this is a very strong ability for maintaining aggro. This is one of the reasons every tank on the planet takes this. So the other ability I want to talk about is Knight's Challenge, where you throw your shield at an enemy, and creatures hit by the shield reset their hate and are compelled to target you for 8 seconds. For these 8 seconds, the monsters will never attack anyone else. They will always attack you, no matter what. And the only downside is it has a 20-second cooldown. This is perfect for when you're between Intimidates or between Intimidating Shouts, and the range guy full tilts. You pop this, and you will maintain aggro for those 8 seconds. Later in the tree, there's also Throw the Boom, which is a separate ability that does the same thing, is AoE and stuns. So you get 2 of them, basically. So those are the example cases of how Intimidate, threat increase, decrease, reduction, etc. works. Now we get to go to my example. Here I am in Inkscapes, and gee, I wonder where I found these images, except for this one. We all know who that is. This is our main hero protagonist, a legendary paladin who's probably a computer science student. If you know, you know. This is the absolute GOAT, Zwalinair, the best enemy in the entire goddamn game, and if you disagree with me, you are wrong, and you should feel bad. Easily the best enemy in the game. Also one of my favorite raids. Now, we also have a bearded devil. This is a flesh golem. Sorry for the shitty image. It turns out that flesh golems are really dark, and every single quest they appear in have really dark backgrounds and terrible lighting, and they appear like a shadow. This is a flesh golem. That's all you need to know. So, first thing I want to talk about, we're just gonna spawn in a bunch of heroes here. So let's say we have our heroes, our paladins. In this world, there's only paladins. We have one guy here, one here, and one here. So, what's gonna happen is this guy. Oh, nope, that's the wrong tool. Nope. Really need to use this program more. I use it to make my this is how I make my texts for my videos, but I don't actually use it for drawing. I really should. Ah, this is what I want. Nope, that's not what I want. Damn it. I need to set the fill to nothing. There we go. I'm gonna set it to black. I'm gonna set the stroke to 5 pixels. See, I know how this works. I know how this program works. So we have our raid boss here, the GOAT Zwalinair. He is always going to attack this guy. Every single time he will attack this one, because this guy is the closest. Now, let's say that we delete him. Go away. And go away. Let's say that, I don't know, these guys were like, pretend this is equidistant. It's not really. Oh, shit. Well, there you go. That's the image I used. These guys are equidistant. So, which one is he going to attack? Zwalinair is going to attack the one with the lowest HP. So, if I go to my text tool, this guy has... Oh, I need a new text. Okay. What text was I using on my last one? Well, it doesn't matter. Text and font. Nope. Can I just have Arial, please? Please? Thank you. What? Oh. Has a drop shadow, probably. Nope. Interesting. DDO. There we go. Alright, problem solved. So, let's just pick a completely arbitrary number. This guy, this paladin, has 67 HP. Jank is going to be the theme of this video. Just be aware. This one has arbitrary number 69 HP. This one has 1,999. He's not welcome in my raid group because he doesn't have 2,000 HP. This one has, let's say, 2,500. This one has 1,000. And this one has 500. So in this example, Zwalinar will always, every single time, attack this one. Now this is assuming that no damage has been dealt. If damage has been dealt, well, then we'll get into that right now. So this one has the lowest HP. He will always attack this one. So Zwalinar will go stomp on this paladin. Rip. Not good. So, as we don't need the health anymore, it's not important. So they're all equidistant. So now, let's say this one is our tank. He has his shield. He's cool. Gonna group them. Oh shit. What? Okay, try that again. Group. There we go. And he's right here. And he's tanking. He's doing his thing. Now let's say that he has 500 DPS, 1000% threat gen, Intimidate 100. Alright. So, with his DPS and his threat gen, that means that he is going to deal the equivalent of... It gets 5,500 threat per second. Let me make this smaller so it fits. Also need to turn down the stroke a little bit more. That's fine. Oh. Okay, now it looks weird. But anyways, fill should be white or black. Just make it black, please. Thank you. Alright, so he has 500 DPS, 1000% threat gen, Intimidate 100. I'm gonna move the Flesh Golem. And this is the equivalent of 5,500 threat per second. Now, this one, this is our mage. He has his little mage hat. This is actually, I like how that fits. That's funny. And he is going to fireball Zwalinar. And for this example, we're just going to assume he has the one spell. So he has, let's say, let's say 10,000 DPS, but can cast a 50,000 damage fireball every 5 seconds. And he has 50% threat reduction. Okay, so that is the equivalent of On average, that would be 5,000 threat per second. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Okay. This guy is our Chad. He's the melee guy, so he's gonna go... Whoops. He's gonna go behind the boss. And he is going to melee the boss. Just gonna draw his text over here. Shit, why does he keep doing that? Bruh. Oh my goodness. There we go. So he is meleeing. And he has, let's say, 20,000 DPS. And minus 95% threat. And this is the... Whoops. This is the same as... Bringing up my calculator. 500, I think? I think it's 500. No, it's 1,000. Okay, 1,000. 1,000 threat per second. And then since this is modern DDO, and there are no casters and there are no melee characters, let's just say, hypothetically, that we had the rest of our legendary paladins are bow guys. I mean, not bow specifically, but range characters. They're not bows because no one plays bows. But bows are the most obvious range thing, so I figured it was good for the example. And we can delete these guys. And since this is DDO, we're going to have them standing in corners. And we're going to have them... we're going to have one standing on a ledge because SSG doesn't know how to make raids without ledges for some reason. And they're completely safe. And then there's this pugger here who's an idiot and is like standing way too close to the boss for some reason. Don't know why, but that's what they're doing. And we're going to say that this pugger has 5,000 DPS. But for some reason, they have 50% threat gen. Don't know why. And they therefore have 7,500 threat per second. This guy over here is falling asleep because it's 3 a.m. So this guy is 0 DPS except when they wake up. When awake, full tilt, and we're gonna say 200,000 DPS. And this 200,000 DPS is with 100% threat reduction. This guy over here on his ledge that SSG conveniently made because fuck ranged and casters. I'm sorry, fuck melees and casters. We like ranged in this world. This guy is going to have 50,000 DPS. And we're going to say 50% threat reduction and so So this would be 25,000 threat per second. And then this guy is 0 threat per second, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. This one over here is going to be, let's just say this one is also 50,000 DPS, but they have 100% threat reduction, and therefore 0 threat per second, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Okay, that was a lot of setup. Let me get to my point. So, let me just drag these guys over here. They'll come in later, but... So, in this example, the tank, who is a badass, has their tower shield, and they're being cool and Chad-like. Their Intimidate... Whoops. Their Intimidate gives... top aggro target plus 220. Yeah, we already calculated. It's 20,000 threat. So, what is going to happen in this scenario? In this scenario, we have our tank, who has tank DPS, and has very bad threat per second. So, assuming nothing changes in this example, they never press Intimidate, then who would pull aggro? This one would not pull aggro. This one would pull aggro. This one would not pull aggro because they're not doing anything. The caster would not pull aggro until they cast Fireball. Actually, technically they wouldn't cast it. They wouldn't get aggro at all. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. And this guy would pull aggro. However, we're going to get into that asterisks right now. So, this wizard over here, doing wizard damage, they only deal their damage every 5 seconds. However, since they deal a gigantic burst of damage and then have a long cooldown, that means that for 1 out of every 5 seconds, they deal 50,000 hate. Or, I mean, technically 25,000, but you get the point. So, that means that our tank, let's say this is second 3 and it's on cooldown, they can maintain aggro just fine by attacking. Then the wizard casts Fireball, and then suddenly they have then Zwalinar has 50,000 hate from this caster, and he is pissed because this guy is playing a caster in 2026 and he really shouldn't do that. So he goes over and attacks this guy because even with Intimidate, you can't hope to hold aggro off of this guy. While yes, you are going to be put at the top of the aggro with this, and you're going to get the 50,000 hate. The problem is, once that expires, if none of these other guys get higher than 50,000, this guy is still going to be at the top. So when Intimidate ends, he's just going to run over here and smack this guy. There's nothing you can do. Now, also in our example, this melee character, who's, smart and has a functioning frontal lobe, with their threat reduction, deals very little threat, and since they're a melee, most of their damage is physical, they are going to basically never pull aggro, as long as they don't do anything dumb, like not pressing Intimidate. This wizard might pull aggro during the downtimes on Intimidate, depending on what the other people do. Now, this ranged character over here has 0 threat per second. This guy will never pull aggro. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. This guy over here on the box has the highest aggro out of everyone here. So this is the guy that the tank is going to need to try to keep aggro off of. When they press Intimidate, it's like 4 seconds, I think, something like that. For the 4 seconds after Intimidate, they will have the same threat as this guy, and they will be aggro, and then those 2 seconds are after, Zwalinar chases over to this guy, and this guy is sad. Also, if this guy presses Intimidating Shout, he will automatically be put at the top of the list, and he will be aggro for however long it is, I don't know. Same with the shield throws. And, oh, also I should just say, let's just say, also as well, use Celestial Mandate, which is 3,000 times 11, so 33,000 extra hate. Let's say this guy presses Celestial Mandate. Suddenly, he has more hate than this guy, meaning that for that 1 second where Celestial Mandate is like this guy is going to maintain aggro over this guy. Now, when this guy continues attacking and continues being an idiot with 50% threat reduction, he will eventually pull aggro because his extra aggro gen is per second is going to be higher than this 33,000 and higher than this 20,000. And eventually this guy will pull aggro. So this is why on tanks, you need to have a bunch of ways to generate aggro, is because when you run into idiots like this, you kind of need to overpower them. So in combination with the DPS, and Intimidate, and Intimidating Shout, and the shield throws, and Intimidate, then you can probably maintain aggro off of this guy, theoretically, barring cooldowns. Now, this last guy up here, this guy is totally asleep, he's probably been drinking, and he's about to fall out of his chair until the tank looks over and sees them picking their nose, is like, hey, hello, can you please help? So then in a panic, this guy who's playing a cringe Quisitive activates No Holds Barred, puts in his Deadly Rain and Through the Mist swap for the 70 range power, activates Reaper's Strike, and then activates their Shirati Epic Moment, and then suddenly they're literal God on Earth, and they deal infinity damage, and Zwaliner is crying in the corner as his HP bar evaporates. This guy also has 100% threat reduction, so technically it's 0 threat per second. However, that 0 is assuming that everything is physical damage. As we already talked about on the wiki page, not all damage is reduced by threat reduction, and since this guy's a ranged character, he's in the Shirati Mantle, which deals elemental damage, which is not physical, and is a proc. And also, he activated the Shirati Epic Moment, which is like 50% of his damage, because that Epic Moment is dumb beyond belief, and that's also a proc. So, in reality, this guy, even though he technically has 0 threat per second, the problem is, the procs are doing 150,000 DPS, so the actual threat is 150,000 per second. And this is why when you have your ranged characters full tilt, for 30 seconds they can't lose aggro, is because of this. Because their procs are doing so much damage that no one can ever hope to keep aggro on them. And usually what ends up happening is this guy, this guy usually ends up very dead. And that's important because when this guy dies for being an idiot, then Zwalinar is going to reset his aggro. And since this guy is dead, he cannot aggro this person. And then we're going to go through all of the checks with everyone else again. And then it'll determine his target. And the aggro is being checked, I think it's like every 6 seconds, something like that. I don't know. It's being checked every certain amount of seconds, and wow, this example is complicated as hell. But I mean, this is a very complicated subject, so I think it matters. But what ends up happening is, in a vacuum, this tank should never be able to hold aggro, because, well, this guy's dead now, but this guy is an idiot and has way too much threat. And this guy does his big bursts, and with those bursts will cause him to pull aggro briefly. That is true. Sorry, I'm just moving this arrow over here for visual purposes. And this melee guy over here, who has mostly physical damage, not procs, will basically never pull aggro. Now, it also mentioned over here, I also put the asterisk because this guy also has procs, like the Shrouded Mantle that he can't turn off. However, since he doesn't have his Epic Moment, and the Shrouded Mantle is the main source of the procs and like damage dice and stuff, most of his damage is still physical. So this guy still won't pull aggro just because most of his damage is not procs, as opposed to this guy who's almost the entirety of his damage is procs because of Shrouded Epic Moment. Now, that's all well and good. That all makes sense. However, what happens if we get this green baddie over here? Well, the same thing. Since everyone's attacking this guy is just going to attack the guy with the lowest HP, which is probably the mage. So he's poking him with his spear. And then what happens is, let's say this one doesn't like this guy and starts shooting him with arrows. Okay, now he's being shot at. Since no one else is attacking this guy, he will run over here and start stabbing this one. However, since this is a bearded devil, when they get below a certain amount of HP, or just randomly, they will teleport. Let's say he teleports over here. Now, when they teleport, they drop all their aggro and all of their hate, and they just immediately beeline for the closest person, which is this guy. This is why in, like, Vision of Destruction, when Sulamati's teleports, sometimes he just teleports on some random guy and just insta-kills them because they're just too close. There's not really anything you can do. You kind of just die, and you hope that the tank is able to shield throw or intimidate or hit them before they run over and kill you. If they don't, you're dead, and it is what it is. Now, the other important thing is some enemies, like some of the raid bosses listed on the wiki, flesh golems, other enemies, not very commonly, they have random aggro. Let's say he's here, and for example's sake, all these guys are equidistant. He might go here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and just go everywhere. No matter what damage you do, he will not care. Now, our legendary Chad tank is over here, and presses Intimidating Shout. Let's flip. This guy is attacking this guy because Bearded Devil, he's busy attacking the Bearded Devil, not paying attention. Slam, slam, slam. His aggro is random and he's hitting this guy. Our tank comes over here, presses Intimidate, doesn't do shit. Because Flesh Golems are immune to Intimidate because they're constructs. Smacks him with his sword, same thing, no difference. This guy just doesn't like this guy for whatever reason. Now he presses Intimidating Shout. Intimidating Shout works on all enemies. And the Flesh Golem immediately comes over and starts attacking this guy, this tank. So I think that's all I wanted to talk about. And this, I don't know why I thought this was a good idea. This feels very silly. Please let me know if this was a helpful visual, because I think it's ridiculous, but I mean, kind of gets the point across. So that is the gist of how aggro works in this game. What should you do as a player now that you know how this works? If you're a DPS, always get 100% threat reduction. It is hard for you to pull aggro, except in the case of this guy, who even though he has 100% threat reduction, he still pulls aggro because when you full tilt like that, you end up doing way too much non-physical damage, and you just pull aggro. So always get 100% threat reduction. In general, melee characters are easier to keep aggro off of than ranged characters because of the Shrouded Mantle and the Epic Moment. Another important thing is casters. Now, obviously, this is a pretty bad caster example, but one of the reasons that casters, or in this example, this caster would pull aggro every so often because they would just, it would be a bad timing between their 50k nuke and the tank's this stuff, and they would pull aggro off that. So that is true. However, one thing to know about casters is more of the caster trees have threat reduction than the melee trees. And also a lot more caster enhancement trees have threat reduction than melee trees. So it's actually relatively easy to get 100% threat reduction on most casters, not all of them. Obviously, melees have the filigree set, which makes it trivial, but that's not the point. But casters, if they get 100% threat reduction, it is borderline impossible for them to pull aggro, because as far as I'm aware, the procs that proc on spells are affected by threat reduction, I believe. I know the wiki says they don't, but I believe they do. I think. Otherwise, Keybolt casters would instantly pull aggro the moment they do anything, and they don't. So, I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Again, if you are good at the game, unlike me, and you know how things work, let me know if that's true. But, yeah, I hope that this example was helpful. Let me know down in the comments if you have any other questions or concerns, or maybe I explained something badly and I need to re-explain it. I think that's gonna be it for me. Love you, Zwalinar, you're the GOAT. Please make more Baylors SSG. If we don't have a Baylor in Terror of the Abyss, it's the ultimate D tier expansion. Thank you all for watching, and I shall smell you later.